Recording in progress. Today we're starting the new book, Book of Ezra. See, it says Ezra over here. Let's see what happened. Cyrus was one of the kings in Persian Empire, and guess who was his advisor? None other than Daniel. Of course, Daniel was advisor for so many kings, many empires. First there was Babylonian Empire, then there was Persian and Medes Empire, and many kings, like 4 kings at least, that he served as an advisor to. In the year 536 BC, Cyrus, king of Persia and conqueror of Babylon, issued a royal order. He said, I hereby decree that the Jews be allowed to travel back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple to their God. He said, the Hebrews are to contribute with free will offerings for this temple, he said. Daniel had served as prime minister to the Persian kings, so this may have played a part in the favorable treatment the Jews received. Why were Jews liked so much or favored? Why were they allowed to go back home? Because of Daniel. I mean, all those kings, they saw Daniel. He survived the den of lions. His friends survived the fiery furnace and other miracles. He explained and interpreted dreams. So because of that, I think Jews received favorable treatment. Then later there was, what's her name? Queen Esther. We're not in the book of Esther yet, but we will read about Esther soon. And because of her too, all those Jewish people, they changed the people's hearts towards Jews, and they were allowed to go back home after 7 years of being in Babylon. Many suspect he showed Cyrus the prophecies of Isaiah written 200 years earlier. Remember a guy called Isaiah? He wrote prophecies, and in one of the prophecies, he names Cyrus by name. There's a prophecy with the word Cyrus in it. Something like this. Who says of Cyrus, Isaiah 200 years ago wrote, who says of Cyrus, he's my shepherd and will accomplish all that I please. He will say of Jerusalem, let it be rebuilt, and of the temple, let its foundations be laid. So Isaiah wrote 200 years before Cyrus about Cyrus, and he called him by name. Of course, Cyrus was impressed, like, wow, this guy and their God, he knew that I'm going to rule and reign and that I will let Jewish people go back home. And that's what happened. Anyway, they were taken to Babylon as slaves, but now it was time for them to go back home. Bring out the temple articles taken by King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, he took all the golden and silver tools that were used in the temple, and they were all there safely preserved. What was taken from the Jews when they were brought here to Babylon will return with them to Jerusalem. 5,400 articles of gold and silver were to return with the Jews. And so they did. The king appointed a man named Sheshbazzar to lead the return. But the Jews looked to Zerubbabel as a leader. We talked about Zerubbabel previously too. Though he was not a king, he was a descendant of King David, one of his descendants. Pack your carts tightly. The journey will take us 4 months. Yes, no airplanes at that time. God had said the Jewish people would serve Babylon for 7 years for their rebellion against his law. In response to the king's edict to rebuild the Jewish temple, close to 30,000 Jews prepared to leave Babylon. And so they did. The Lord Almighty has fulfilled his word. Our forefathers were in exile in Babylon for 70 years because of our disobedience to him. Now we will obey, they said. What will we do first? We rebuild our homes and our villages, and then we will meet here in Jerusalem as one. We will sacrifice and we will worship as the Lord has shown us. The people rebuilt their houses and began to reclaim their ancestral properties, and each gave according to their ability. We want our children to be able to worship here and know what it is to fear the Lord. They donated money for the rebuilding of the temple. For the rebuilding of the house of God, the people gave 1,100 pounds of gold and 3 tons of silver. They brought the offerings to Zerubbabel and the elders. Now the work can begin. The people came to Jerusalem to celebrate the feasts of trumpets, of the atonement, and of tabernacles. The assembly had not been held in 7 years. The people looked to 2 men. Joshua, not Jeshua, but Joshua was the recognized spiritual leader, and Zerubbabel was the one the people looked to as their civil leader. It is time to rebuild, they said, the altar of the Lord. The people wasted no time. They began building their altar in accordance with the instructions God had given Moses. While the Jews had been in Babylon, though, both the Assyrian and the Babylonian kings had brought in people from other countries to occupy the land. So the land wasn't completely empty. Some other nations, other people groups were living in that land, and they had their own ways and their own gods. They viewed the Jews as a threat. They will change our way of life, they said. They are under a curse. That is why their God removed them from this land. Let's read this part first. Our burnt offerings will anger the inhabitants here, and they outnumber us. We are doing what the Lord requires. He will take care of us, people say. Despite their fear of the people around them, the Israelites did what the Lord had instructed years earlier. They began offering sacrifices to God. The Jews who had intermarried with the foreign immigrants were called Samaritans. Superstitious, they worshipped the Hebrew God as well as other gods. Samaritans did. Samaritans will come across Samaritans many times in the New Testament too. So they are half Jews, half foreigners. We want to help rebuild the temple, Samaritans said. You Samaritans have no part in this, Jewish people said. We alone will build a temple to the God of Israel, just as King Cyrus commanded us. The Samaritans began a campaign of frustration and sent a letter to the Persian king. The Jews who came to us from you are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city, they wrote in the letter to the king. If they continue, they will quit paying you taxes. Look in the records and see their past rebellions. Historical note, the Persian king had already secretly murdered his brother to keep his empire stable. That's just politics. Nobody likes politics, right? And the king says, I will not tolerate revolt. Send this letter. The work of the Jews must be stopped now. So the king says, because they are so rebellious, if we allow them to continue build the temple, they will rebel against us, and then we have to start the war again and send our army there to fight with them. Let's just stop their construction projects. That's what the king said. As ordered, work on the temple stopped for 16 years. That's also was part of the book that we read previously, the Haggai. Remember that guy, Haggai guy? Yes, but God sent the prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and others to speak to the people. And that's the, I guess, revision of the previous book that we finished yesterday. Is it right for you to live in paneled houses while the house of God lies in ruin? Return to me, declares the Lord Almighty, and I will return to you, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. Encouraged by the words of the prophets, the Hebrews began to rebuild the temple, only to bring out the local governor. Who authorized this? Why are you building again? They complained, of course. We are servants of the God of heaven and earth and are only doing what King Cyrus had ordered, they said. They claim King Cyrus ordered this rebuilding when he let the Jews return to their city, they tell king. And so the king reads that edict, and yes, they find out that indeed King Cyrus allowed them to go back home and to rebuild the temple. And so they agree. They say, okay, go and let the temple be built. Pay the workers' expenses from the royal treasury. Supply their needs daily without fail. Not only the king did not stop them this time, but he said, pay them money so they can rebuild it faster, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to God and pray for the well-being of the king and his sons. And so with this support and encouraged by the strong preaching of Haggai and Zechariah, the Jews were able to finish the temple. Of course, the temple was not as good as Solomon's temple. When those who were babies, when they compared this temple with the one that was built by Solomon, they cried. Let's read now. A little bit long today, I'm sorry. Sometimes the story is kind of long, but I want you to know what's happening. Rayendra, we didn't hear your voice for a long time. Can you read the first part?
Okay, teacher. Okay, sir. Isara. Rebuilding the temple. In the first year that King Cyrus became emperor of Persia, he encouraged the Jews still living in Babylon to go back to Jerusalem and help rebuild the temple. The Jews who went back were very excited about rebuilding the temple. They gave money to pay
the stonemasons.
The stonemasons who cut blocks of stone and laid them in place, and also for the carpenters who did the woodwork. They had dug deep trenches and laid a strong foundation. However, when someone of the old priests saw the foundation of the new temple, they were really disappointed because they remembered how much bigger the first temple had been. But there were others who shouted and sang for joy because the foundation was start of their return to worship.
That's right. Why are foundations so important? That's the question. It's like when you study mathematics, the foundations or basics are so important. If you don't have them, you'll fail all the way. Foundations of the buildings are important too, and Abhishek will read us that part. Right, Abhishek?
Why are foundations so important? Have you ever watched concrete being poured into a deep trench and thought that a waste to dig a deep hole only fit it again? Even though a foundation cannot be seen once the building is built, it has a very important purpose because the whole building rests on it. Without a foundation, the building would crumble into a heap of rubble. When our lives go through troubled times, we also need a solid foundation to hold us up and keep us strong. If our faith rests on Jesus, the rock, we have a sure foundation. Those who do not what they believe are on shaky ground. When when trouble comes, they don't know what to believe or what to do. They suddenly feel weak and helpless, and their lives fall apart. Matthew chapter 7, verse 26 to 27. It is scary not to have someone mighty to depend on in times of trouble. Rely completely on Jesus. He is the rock that will keep you standing firm in times of trouble.
Thank you, Abhishek. Let's read the verse for today together. Ready, go. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid.
Other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3:11.
Is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3:11.
Yep, that's the one. I think it's a good lesson, important lesson. What is your foundation? Do you have the foundation? If there's no foundation, I think there's going to be a trouble in the future, right? When you study math, do you have a good foundation for math? Like multiplication table, for example. That's the foundational math, yes. Right? What is 6 times 7?
42.
Ooh, good job. What is 11 times 11?
6 times 7, 42.
132. No.
122. No, wait. 121.
Yes, you got it. Anyway, yeah, mathematics, that's not the foundation I'm talking about right now. The foundation, what is the foundation of your faith? And how strong is it? When troubles come and you're under pressure, will you become a diamond or will you crumble into dust? That's the song we sang today about carbon, right? If you have the strong foundation, no matter what kind of, because, you know, diamond, it's the strongest element.
Faith,
You know that it's very strong?
knowing the God's word.
Yes, diamond is the hardest, strongest element because of the bonds it makes under pressure, carbon bonds. But that's not the chemistry lesson we're talking about right now. I'm saying that if you have the strong foundation, you will not be crushed into dust and destroyed. You will become only stronger if your foundation is strong. That's the point. And now, let's sing Happy Birthday to Gayana. Ready? Go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gayana. Happy birthday to you. Oh, yeah, I muted you again.
Thank you very much.
Gayana, let me stop the recording.